Hello, I am Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And we're doing a press X today, in person, not over the internet.
Yeah, I know, it's great.
But before we go into, as outlined in the previous episode about...
Zombies.
Yeah, that was it. There'll be a little link in the top right there, so you can look at that video as well. But before we get into what we're talking about today, which is East vs West Horror, do click that subscribe and that notification bell to keep up to date with all of whatever this is. So with that out of the way, talk about games.
Yeah, today we're talking about horror games. Eastern horror games versus Western horror games. And what's the big difference?
You really do talk like a narrator guy. Okay, let's separate them into two camps.
Rob is currently separating horror games into two camps.
It's there's two different ways to look at this. There's what is the stereotype of the Western horror game, what's the stereotype of the Eastern horror game. So I think we have to tackle that. Obviously there's games which defy stereotypes, but you can't have a discussion like this talking about stuff which defies stereotypes. It makes it very, very difficult, so we have to go by that rule of thumb. Yeah,
the stereotype for the Eastern horror game is basically it's the Sadako stereotype. The creepy female character with the black hair over the face.
That's the stereotype for J-horror, Rob. That's not the same thing as the stereotype for Japanese horror games. Because J-horror, for a long time, it was like those scary movies. They saw the first J-horror movie, and all they did was put Sadako... If you don't know what Sadako is, she's the... Let's say teenage girl with long black hair covering her face.
Who crawls out of the well. And out
usually
of the TV.
Does like spider walks as well.
Yeah. See, this is the thing... You say that, but I've played a lot of Eastern horror games, and that is one of the common things in them. I know, if you look at games like the Fatal Frame games and Kuon, Forbidden Siren...
To a degree, yes, that's true, to a degree.
You know, even
But
games...
again, like I've kind of boxed myself into a corner there. I said we have to go by the stereotypes, and now I'm saying, no, that's not a stereotype. But okay, I won't interrupt anymore.
But yeah, even back on the PlayStation 1 with games like Hell Knight and Chaos Break and stuff like that, there was this trend towards... it's kind of a cross between that and the really kind of grotesque body horror, you know, with the distorted limbs and stuff like that.
I hinted at that, yeah.
So I think those are the two things that generally you find quite a lot of in Eastern horror, whereas Western horror... A lot of zombies?
I think I could define it in a lot easier way. You have over-explained that, as usual. Eastern horror, I personally would say it's much more atmosphere-based.
Yes.
It's not about... Oh, cripes, that thing jumped out the cupboard. I have brown pants on.
Yeah, I wasn't going to talk about the atmosphere, though. You said stick to stereotypes.
Yeah, that's a stereotype. The stereotype of a Japanese horror game is the atmosphere.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you that, yes.
Silent Hill being the apple of the farm? Whatever.
Eye.
Apple of the eye. That analogy. And
although that is a horrific image, a person with apples for eyes.
Yeah, it is. Whereas the Western stereotype is, I guess it's twofold. One, action horror games.
Yes.
They're very much a Western thing. And the new one is sort of post-Outlast, post-Five Nights at Freddy's, which is the quiet. Oh, jump, bang, that thing's going to get you.
Oh, you mean the shock horror
And
ones?
yeah, it'll actually throw Alien Isolation. On these videos, it's coming across I'm a real hater of Alien Isolation. And I just want to take this opportunity to say, yes, I am a real hater of Alien Isolation. So, yeah, there we go.
Here's the thing, right? If you compare a game like Alien Isolation, where you basically have no weapons...
Well, the problem with Alien Isolation, just to establish it, is it's a hide-and-seek simulator. You hide in the cupboard, because if the xenomorph sees you, you're dead.
Yeah.
And that's a really, I guess, anemic way to pace a game.
The weird thing is, back on the PlayStation 2, Capcom released Haunting Ground, which was basically a hide-and-seek simulator... Third-person perspective rather than first-person.
It didn't totally kill you, though, if the thing saw you. It gave you some sort of ability to stand up for yourself. Not so much stand up for yourself, but get away.
Yeah, but the thing is, I found Haunting Ground to have much more of a tense atmosphere than Alien Isolation.
Yes, it does. Because just to talk about sort of gore for a second, completely upend it. There's this line of thought which you can have, let's say, scanners.
Yeah.
Headsplosion. That's fantastical. But it's goofy, isn't it? Because we have no notion of what a headsplosion feels like.
Yeah.
But the scene from Evil Dead 1 in which there's a pencil in Ash's ankle.
Yeah.
Far more relatable. So it has that sort of sense. We can play a game like Alien Isolation and we think, oh, that's terrible, that's horrifying, but Blammo Dead, it's not very relatable.
Yeah.
But we've all had that experience as a kid, I guess, where we're somewhere where we shouldn't, and the owner or the person who lives there sees us, and then we have that sort of giggly running away, we're scared, but we don't want to be caught and run away.
Yeah.
And
weirdly enough,
that's like a very nice divide there.
Do you know, weirdly enough, what you've just said reminds me of an indie game that came out, Hello Neighbor.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
It's the one where it's a bit like The Burbs, I suppose, where you suspect that your neighbor has done something bad, so you break into their house to try and investigate, and then you have to escape before the neighbor catches you.
Yeah, because that's relatable stakes there.
Yeah.
But getting a little bit away from sort of the central conceit of Eastern versus Western.
You mentioned atmosphere. I just want to dwell on that for a second, because one of the things that Eastern horror games tend to do quite well, I've found, is tell a story.
Yeah, I mean, Western stuff does it too, but
not to the same kind of degree. I mean,
I think just on that point, I think Eastern horror, it has more of a mythological, supernatural bent, and it all plays into this sort of the machinations of something intangible,
something otherworldly.
Yeah, whereas the Western stuff is, somebody's messing about with science again.
Yeah, T-viruses and stuff like that.
Oh,
but
dear.
I mean, if you take a basic game, an indie game like Detention.
What was that about anyway? It was just a little girl in a place, or a little boy in a place with big, meaty men.
It was kind of a reflection of the war that happened in Thailand or some.
Oh, I was thinking of Little Nightmares there. That's I completely went the wrong direction.
Yeah, I'm talking about Detention. You know which game I'm on about now.
Yeah, I have. I've not played it. Sausage Nightmare Men, I think, is a better name than Little Nightmares. But that's a different story.
Little Nightmares was kind of what was it? The City of Lost Children.
Yeah, it had that sort of vibe to it.
But this is the thing. If you take a game like Detention, it did a really amazing job of developing an atmosphere and telling a story in little pieces and actually making you want to continue, but also being terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, there's exceptions to the rule. Where do we stand on calling Play Dead games horror?
How do you mean?
Play Dead, who did Limbo and Inside.
Yeah.
Where do we stand on calling them horror?
Well, Limbo and Inside...
Because personally, I'd say Limbo is 1,000% a horror game.
Yeah, Limbo, I'd agree, is totally a horror game. Inside, I think, is more of a thriller than a horror.
Yeah, but let's just stick on Limbo then. Because Limbo is a bit of an exception. Again, I said I wasn't going to talk about these, but I kind of have to. Because Limbo is one of these games where it doesn't really feel like it affiliates itself with either the East or the West. It's a horror game in which you play a little child lost in limbo, in which everything will murder you. And it's horrible, and it's gothic, and it's nightmarish, which is very striking. And to a similar extent, I would also say that Resident Evil is kind of without affiliation, because originally it started off as a complete atmospheric thing.
Yeah.
There wasn't many zombies in the first one, going back, 1990? Let's just say 95, because I haven't got it in front of me. It was very much atmosphere-based. There wasn't a lot of zombies.
Yeah.
But as it sort of became the hot thing, one of the hot things in the 90s, it became much more action-orientated. But at the same time, it has a lot of it's very Western. Let's just say that. It's incredibly Western.
Yeah.
Which it's not. Obviously, Capcom are a Japanese company, so it kind of... Yeah, you see what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I do get what you're getting at.
That's kind of globalization, though, which is a different thing, where it's trying to make some... It sounds like I'm hating on Resident Evil now. I love Resident Evil. but it sounds like it's making a product which is accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
Which is, it's something entirely different, isn't it?
Box yourself into another corner.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. Okay. So let's take a left turn here then. Third-person perspective games like Resident Evil 4, Dead Space, that sort of thing. Well, Dead Space is first person, isn't it?
No, it's third.
Is it third? I can't remember.
It's third. I will always remember Dead Space because EA killed it.
All right. Okay. So Dead Space, Resident Evil 4, 5, 6, those sorts of games. They're very action-oriented.
Well, yes, but you're also incredibly overmanned.
Yeah.
One of the games which I think did it particularly badly, again, I'm probably going to get a bit of hate for this, is Fear. I've brought this up on this series before.
Yeah.
Where Fear is basically a garden variety first-person shooter. Again, moving away from the first-person stuff, but still, the point is there. It's a garden variety first-person shooter, which had a character called Alma, I think memory serves, who just popped up and went bugaboo, and then you fell off some stairs.
Hang on, let me just point something out, right? See, we were talking about...
Alma is the Sadako stereotype, by the way.
That's what I was about to say. Alma is the Sadako stereotype.
Yes, she was. That Japanese or
no, it wasn't. See, this is the thing. I didn't mind Fear as much because I found some interesting aspects to it, but I didn't find it scary. I didn't think...
Because it's just a bolt out of the blue, isn't it? It's like when you're falling off your seat and you grab your seat. That's not you being scared. That's you, sort of the shock. It's a shock reaction.
Yeah,
that's a bad example. A better example is falling out of a tree.
Yeah, but that is exactly the same kind of scare as games like Five Nights at Freddy's and stuff like that. And I hate the fact that people keep saying Five Nights at Freddy's is a great horror game. It's not.
It's a ghost... Oh, hang on. It's a ghost ride, yeah. Ghost ride.
Yeah, that's all it is. But that's not really scary. That's thrilling rather than scaring. Because it's a jump scare.
Yeah, I hate calling them jump scares. I think scare is something which makes your skin crawl.
Yeah.
And has this sort of reaction in your brain where you think, I have to get away from here. I can't be here anymore.
Yeah.
Something bad's going to happen. See, that's fear to me. Thinking, it's very, very quiet, very, very quiet. Oh, Boola's down in the dinosaur clown monster man. I haven't played the game, so...
Yeah. See, this is the thing. I did actually play Five Nights at Freddy's, and I was bored. Okay.
What was it? Is it just checking security cameras?
Check security cameras, and then all of a sudden, boo, I'm here. You're dead. And I'm like, okay, fine. And that happened a few times. I thought, this game sucks.
Sounds like a Flash game. Like a Flash animation
basically
game.
Is. See, here's the thing, right? Over in the East, you have these anime-based horror games like Corpse Party and I don't know if I'd call Yomawari an anime-based horror game, but...
what was that game called? You just reminded me of something. Gregory Horror Show?
Yes, Gregory...
was that Japanese?
No. I think it was Capcom who brought it out, though.
That's a memory that I'm clawing at there.
Yeah.
If you never played Gregory Horror Show...
It's a great game.
I think Rob has to explain it because my memory's a bit sketchy on this one.
Gregory Horror Show is a game that you... No. Let me put it this way. If you can find a copy of Gregory Horror Show, right, play it because it's an experience.
It doesn't play particularly well from what I remember.
No, it doesn't.
It's kind of in an asylum sort of setup, and everything is horribly grotesque. And there was a Nurse Ratchet character who's a dinosaur, if I remember.
Yep.
So, yeah. I don't know what my point was of bringing that up.
But anyway, I mentioned Corpse Party. Loads of people I've spoken to reckon Corpse Party is a scary game. I played it, and I could understand why people would think it was scary, because it does have a lot of the typical horror tropes, especially the ones from Japan and Korea and China, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But because its art is anime, I didn't find it scary. Whereas a game like Yomawari, where it has minimal intro, you're basically a little girl going out looking for her sister and a dog, right?
Very relatable.
And you have to stay in the light and out of the shadows, because the shadows have all sorts of things in them that you can't see until they just kind of quickly move into the light and then move back. And that, I think, even though it's such a simple game, that has attention to it because it's top-down perspective, right? It has attention to it, which I found strange and slightly unnerving at times because the monster, you're only a little girl. The character is only a little girl.
Okay, I want to wrap this up now. Because we've named this video East versus West Horror. Which do you prefer?
I'd have to say,
and why?
I'd have to say, having played a lot of Western horror games and a lot of Eastern horror games. I mean, I've played games. I've got a shelf of just horror games, right?
Yeah.
Nothing else, just horror games. So games like Obscure, I've got all the Silent Hills, I've got all the Resident Evils, I've got loads of Japanese horror games like Forbidden Siren and...
It's a very long way to say what you think. That's just you slapping your gaming meat on the table again.
Yeah, I know. Every opportunity.
Okay.
It'll happen in the next video as well.
Pick a side, Rob. Pick a side.
All I'm saying is, if it comes to just blasting the heads off zombies in games like Dead Rising and stuff like that, then...
Necromorphs, Rob. Get the right term. It's Necromorphs in Dead Space.
I didn't say that. I said Dead Rising.
Well, I was thinking of something else entirely, obviously. I miss Dead Space.
Yeah, I miss Dead Space as well. Dead Space had a lot of potential, unrealized potential.
Well, it had ruined potential by EA because they thought it was an online shooter. But anyway, pick a side, Rob.
Yes.
Pick a side.
If it comes to just action and mindless killing of zombies, well, mindless. How do you kill something that's already dead? Mindless execution, mindless destruction of zombies. Then it would be Western games, right? But if I want to actually play something that I find unnerving and can actually make me feel scared, then it would be Eastern all the way.
My answer's a lot less rambling, funnily enough. I separate Eastern and Western horror into a very different sort of classification. I'd say Eastern horror is obviously the Eastern sort of horror game movies you get, so like, I don't know, Dark Water, The Ring, stuff like that. Whereas Western horror games, I would equate much more to blockbuster horror movies.
Yes.
So like It, and other things, which I can't remember off the top of my head right now. And it comes to me to the question of what do I prefer more? Do I prefer blockbuster horror games or do I prefer insidious skin-crawling horror games? And for me, it's insidious skin-crawling horror games. So I will always side with the East because outside of those anime things, they're generally doing better things with the genre.
Well, I mean, there was a Korean game that came out in 2004. I think it's called White Day, A Labyrinth Named School. And, I think it was released in Korea for a while, for a couple of years. And then people started making patches because it wasn't going to get transported to the West.
Yeah.
And then it came out, I think, earlier this year or last year. And people started playing it. And they were like, where has this game been? It's been in this limbo for like for over a decade. It's one of those games that is, because it's a school-based environment, everybody can relate to it.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
And it comes back to what you said before about the pencil in the ankle.
The gore thing is a relatable thing.
It's a relatable thing. That's why when I've mentioned Yomawari, you remember what it was like being a kid, being afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
It might.
There's monsters under my basement.
Yeah.
Under my basement. There's monsters under my bed.
Yeah. Being a kid, being afraid of the dark, letting your imagination run wild with what could be in the darkness out there. You know, that sort of thing is totally relatable. And I'd love to see more games that kind of play on, that sort of aspect of human behavior.
I don't want to go that sort of highfalutin with it, but yeah, I agree. I think that's a good point to end on.
Yeah.
If you like this conversation, have anything to add, please do comment below. But until next time, with Press X, thanks for watching.